Hi, I'm Courtney Terry, and this is Arts Alive. I'm here with Lynda Phillippi, the former host, current host extraordinaire of Arts Alive up until this point. So, Lynda, we were just talking about Arts Alive, and how did you get started with Arts Alive?
Oh, this is a great story. So this was, I don't know, when the world was still in black and white, I'm going to put it that way, in the 90s, the mid-90s. And I was on the board of the Arts Alliance of Yamhill County. And Frank Nelson, the late, great Frank Nelson, had his show Speaking Frankly. And he came to a board meeting, and he said, I have an idea for a television show, somewhat like my own, a TV, interview style in the studio, and we will interview the artists of Yamhill County. Does anybody want to host it? And I literally sat on my hands because I wanted to say, yes, I'll do it, I want to do it. And I just sat there. And finally, Frank, and nobody said a word, and Frank said, will nobody step up to host the show? And I said, I will. And everybody said, perfect, Lynda will do it. And that was a 19-year run.
Wow.
I know. And I stopped doing it when my father was terminally ill in Oklahoma, and I was going back there, all the time to be with him. And then, of course, one thing and another in life and COVID and everything. And then when Mike Santenay said, you want to pick this back up a bit on a limited basis, and Walt Height is doing some shows as well, I said, sure. But then I found out that you may want to come on and do it, and that is absolutely wonderful, because I'm the firmest believer in the whole universe of fresh energy and passing the baton. It's absolutely the best thing to do. So I'm really glad that you're going to do that. But that's kind of how it started. And before there was a McMinnville Community Media, what do you want to say, nonprofit organization, the way that it worked was the cable channels have to designate a percentage of money to a public access television station everywhere that they broadcast. So it was over right by Harvest Fresh in this little studio, and I think Ruben was one of the first people down there, and it was, the big heavy cameras, that you hold on to. Oh my gosh, it was pretty crazy. But we did try going out on location, and I remember that first summer, it was so hot. And we would go to all these different places, and everybody was sweating, and it was roasting, and the sound was weird, and the quality wasn't good, and we kind of moved it into a studio. And then I remember there was one day, and we did 7 shows, 30-minute shows, back to back to back to back to back. I wore the same outfit. I maybe put on some lipstick every once in a while, but that was it, and that wore me out. And so we did that 30-minute format for years until finally, and I think we started the show, actually, if you really want the truth, the year before Oregon Art Beat started.
Oh.
It's been that long that it goes back. But I like Oregon Art Beat's format, but obviously they have a different budget than we do as well. But I thought, well, they do 3 people in half an hour, and you get a lot of the B-roll, the background stuff that's fed in. And so then we decided to do 2 15-minute segments and turn that into a show. And that's so much better, because I'll tell you, if you're going to take this over, there's nothing worse than here you are and you say, so, da-da-da-da-da, very open-ended, and the person looks at you like, and then you find yourself filling in with anecdotes of your childhood. One time I had these 2 kids on from Linfield, and they'd won a vocal and a musical awards, and they both had blue eyes, and these 4 blue eyes are staring at me like deer in the headlights. So I'm telling them the stories about my brother and I taking music lessons, and good Lord knows what all, because you got to fill the time, right? And try to encourage them to open up a little bit. And sometimes, and then people say, what if I swear? It's like, you can't swear because we don't go back. And that's another thing. Right from the very beginning, we made the decision that this was going to be a point and shoot. Because the more that you devote to post-production, the less likely you are to ever get anything on the air. It's like, that's just not right. No, we can do this. Forget it. You know, you're going to have a conversation. You're going to talk to somebody. And however it comes out, boom. And I think people really like that. So, you know, it shows the humanity. As one of my many sainted former husbands said, it looks like people did it. So that's what I have to say about that.
Nice. I definitely understand that feeling just the few times when I've been a guest on these shows, how often it feels just like an easy conversation. And that, I mean, you don't forget that the cameras are there because that is why you're here. But I've always enjoyed just how easy it is to talk, and having a host that is engaged and asking you the right questions that will make you have longer answers. So more open-ended questions.
Well, and you know, and that was the other thing too, is I guess, you know, right from the beginning, and now that he's gone, I can say this, you know, kind of as opposed to the Frank Nelson model, I wanted it to be less me and more you, more guest, because they're seeing the host. They're seeing the host every single week, and you know, whatever, no matter how well you think or highly you think of yourself, I mean, it gets old. So
Fair enough.
the focus should absolutely be on the guest and what's happening, and you know what they're doing. But I think you're really a natural at this because you know you have such a bright, bubbly personality, and you're obviously very friendly. You're very enthusiastic, and I think if you're genuinely interested in people and you really do care, that's really, you know, 90% of it. I would say, and the other 10, of course, is just showing up with your teeth brushed.
Yes.
You know.
Check. Excellent. I'm off to a great
That's
start.
about all you got. You know. Anyway, so
And
yeah.
be ready to fill the space, hopefully not with my anecdotes, but be prepared.
You know, and the other thing I guess I would say is, Mike did want me to mention a few things of like, okay, some technical things. Well, you don't really have, 3 camera people to look at and wonder, who's, and sometimes that could get a little awkward because you could hear the director saying camera 3, camera 1, camera 2, and you're listening to this in the back and you're watching people maneuver and jiggle. So having fixed cameras with just one person here, especially if it's Liz, who's professional and stately, queenly. She doesn't. Yes, she doesn't. She doesn't. Make a lot of racket over there or anything. That's great. And the other thing is to remind people if they're bald, yes, if your head's really shiny, you might want to pat it down a little bit. And what I used to tell people is this is a different kind of a format because we have the tablecloth and all this, but I'd say your feet will show. Because they'd be like, are my feet going to show? Well, were you wearing slippers or what were you going to? Yeah, your feet will show.
Did you go out in public this morning?
Right.
You should be okay.
Yeah, and so sometimes people come in and you think, wow, this is going to be interesting. But I think it's great, and you may not have to do a lot of this because Mike is so professional. But if you have to go out and hustle your own guests every week, like the bad old days when I had to do it, you're hustle for the guests. And you don't really want the same, like 3 painters in a row. A painter, a writer, a dancer, a performer. Gallery's obviously always great, or anything like that. And the more people can provide in the way of B-roll is kind of nice. And it can, you see the TV, like right now you see me, but it's nice when you're not seeing me and you're just seeing like their images rolling across the screen.
Oh, yeah.
And then you're talking to the guest over the top of it. That's helpful in a way, and I think it breaks it up for the audience as well. It's just a little bit more visual stimulation that keeps people interested.
I can see that. So, on the spot a little bit, what were some of the more memorable interviews that you've done?
Okay, well, there's one that it always comes to my mind only because I love him to pieces. I just love him. But he's a potter, and he came on, and he sat there, and he kind of scuffled his shoe a little bit, and he finally said, "I'm just tongue-tied. I don't have any idea what to say. I don't have any idea what to do." I mean, right on camera, he kind of said that, and I think we started over once because we were about 2 minutes into it, and finally it was just like, you're just going to have to talk. And he was okay with it after that. And then of course, the deer in the headlights of the two people I told you about. But mostly what I'll tell you is really all the fascinating people. And one of the things that I realized, okay, this is like a really great life lesson, I think, is how many people said that art saved their lives. Maybe they were not able, in some cases, they weren't able to start until they were older, maybe even retired, because they had that voice, the parents in their head, artists never amount to anything, and you'll starve to death, and you've got to be a CPA. And it wasn't until they were much, much older, having read Julia Cameron probably, to give themselves permission, to sort of express what was all that creativity that had been burning inside them. But some people, as very young people, especially if they have, any kind of, alternative learning modalities, whatever the term is now, you know what I'm trying to say,
yes.
is they can't sit still in a classroom, and they're not doing well at school, and they can't write, and they can't do math, and they can't focus, but they're fabulous artists, and they'll say, "Art saved my life. Art saved my life when I was a child. If it wasn't for art, I don't know what I would have done." Mm-hmm. And I think that those, so meeting so many different kinds of people and so many different kinds of artists has really opened me up to all the ways that people live their lives. Because I get the sense that you're like me. You're pretty much out there, right? Life's a carnival. And I love it. I love my life, and I love living my life that way, as I'm sure you love living your life that way. But for some people, the idea, and there are people I could never, I don't care how talented, I don't care how much I begged, I could never get them in the studio because they are simply really just like the quintessential introvert, and they're not going to come out, they're not going to crawl out of that cave for love nor money, And so, fair enough. But there is definitely, that artistic sensibility with some artists that makes it much more difficult to draw things out, in which case their art kind of speaks for itself to some degree, and then they're just kind of interpreting some of that for you, and maybe not sharing very much that's personal. But if you really want, a lively group, bring on a cast of whoever's got something going on at Gallery of the high school, because performers,
absolutely,
you can't shut them up. They're great.
I think the late night staff at McMinimans could tell us all about that. So
I'm sure, yes, absolutely. So those are really fun people, performers. Anybody that performs, those people make really great guests because they practically do it themselves. You basically just introduce them and it's off to the races. So yeah,
no scripts needed.
Right, but writers, writers are very interesting, even though they can be introverted. Usually they'll come alive when they're talking about their characters or the plot or things like aspects of the work itself, maybe not so much about them again. People are just so different, but I've met so many people, and I think about, between being a florist for so many years and doing flowers and weddings and for so many people, and then doing this show and meeting so many people that way, it's actually been really, really wonderful, because it's a great way to get to know the characters of your community who live in this county, and there's so many that you maybe don't know now, but you will. Oh, I've got another one for you. Okay, this was memorable. Thank heavens. Okay, it was a dad and his son. And the son, it was a challenge. The son was very challenging. They were on together. The son was very challenging. But I happen to know that he is an expert at the yo-yo.
Oh.
Okay, so he brought his yo-yo, and when things just completely bogged down and they were going nowhere, it's like, oh, this thing's going to spin, circle right down the drain. I said, so you want to show us some yo-yo tricks? And boom! Turned the whole thing around. It was fabulous, and everybody was mesmerized. I mean, I was, and it was thinking, how do you get that thing up? Because I could do it about twice, and then it just unspools, and it goes all the way to the bottom. but it's the same as a hula hoop. My best friend can hula hoop probably for 8 hours straight. I have hips, but man, I wiggle it around and it slides right down to my feet. So, I mean, you just never really know the tricks people have up their sleeve, and that's what's kind of fun is you get these whimsical little surprises, and I think it's great.
Well, thank you for telling me so much about Arts Alive, where it's been, and giving me so many good tricks. I will remember, when in doubt, ask for yo-yos. But thank you so much for taking the time to interview me today.
Thank you.